All right, today we're going to do the vertical translations and phase shifts of sine and cosine graphs. We've already done amplitude change and period change. These are the formats, and K represents a vertical shift of the whole graph. Okay, this means that there's a change in the center line. The normal center line was y equals 0. If K is positive, the whole graph is going to shift up K units. If it's negative, it's going to shift down. A is your amplitude change. Okay, A is the number in front of sine or cosine. Now, K's, guys, could be at the back as well. They could be outside of this parenthesis added on at the end, right? So if there's something added on in the front or the back, that's a center line change. Okay, now, if A is negative, the graph is reflected about the x-axis, and you should have already graphed a few of those based on the assignment that you had from the last time we were together, which was Monday. B is the period change. To get the new period, if there is a b value other than 1, you take the old period, which is normally 2 pi for cosine and sine. I guess I got to write the whole word. Cosine and sine, the period is normally 2 pi. So if you're going to be doing a cosine or sine change, change of period, you take 2 pi divided by b. Now, obviously, if sine and cosine, remember our reciprocal functions also would be the same period of 2 pi, which would be the secant and the cosecant. But we're only graphing the sine and cosine mainly and doing these shifts and stuff to them. That was just a shape of a cosine or sine wave. All right, for our first example, here we go. This is your K value, this is your A value, and this is where your B value is. Always list the center line, which will be y equals 3, your K value. It says K is 3, A is 3, B is 2/3. The amplitude is the absolute value of A, so that would be 3. The period, you take 2 pi, the original period for the sine wave, and you divide it by 2/3, the B value, which takes us to multiplying by the reciprocal. So 2 pi times 3/2. The 2's cancel out, and you get 3 pi. Okay, so the period is 3 pi. Now we're going to graph one period. Now, if the center line is at 3, the way I did the worksheet, for this particular one, since the center line is actually 3 up from 0, I'm going to use the line right here this time only for the center line. Okay, because otherwise we're not going to be able to fit it on our picture very nicely. Are you with me? Because it's actually shifted up 3 from the x-axis, and then the amplitude's 3, so we'd have to go 3 above there, and that would kind of mess things up. So here's what I'm going to do. This time, and the rest of them I'm going to put 0 here, okay? I'm going to let you put 3 on just this time. Now, that is not the x-axis, and the x-axis is where you label things, okay, not on your center line. All right, so what I need to do is say, all right, my amplitude is 3, so I'd have to go 3 units above, which would put me at a high point of 6. Our max would be 6. All right, so the amplitude, you take your center line plus your amplitude to know where it maxes out. Now, where would our minimum be? So if we went down 3, 1, 2, 3. Now we went 3 down from 3, which would be 0, which is actually our x-axis. So I'm going to draw in the x-axis now because that's what I need to label. Now I've got a straight line tool. If you're interested in using a ruler, I do have some rulers up here. You may borrow if you like. How many of you would like to have a ruler? Some people, because some. Okay, so we need to do our labeling on our x-axis. This, of course, is our x-axis. Now, we're going to look at what the period was. It was 3 pi. So I'm going to go out to here. I'm going to cut 3 pi in half. So I'm estimating that's 3 pi over 2. What would half of 3 pi over 2 be? And half of 3 pi over 2 is 3 pi over 4. 1.5 pi over, I don't know how else to say it, but it's 3 pi over 4. Half of, when you do half of something, you can multiply by 1/2. That'll do it. Okay, and now the scale, the x scale here is actually 3 pi over 4. Now, I got to cut in half between 3 pi over 2 and 3 pi and get it labeled. So 3 pi over 4 plus another 3 pi over 4, because our scale is 3 pi over 4, would be 6 pi over 4, which reduces to 3 pi over 2. So 6 pi over 4 plus another 3 pi over 4 would be 9 pi over 4. All right, now I got my key values labeled on my x-axis. Excuse me. All right, what else do I need to remember? Well, pretty much got everything I need. I've got the 3 key values on my y-axis, and I've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 key values on my x-axis. All right, now I'm going to say, all right, I need to graph a sine wave. The sine normally starts 0, 0, but this has been shifted up 3. So it's going to start here at 0, 3. Okay, and we make sure we write our points correctly. Then it would go up to its max, so it's going to be at 3 pi over 4, 6. It would then come back down to its midline or center line. It would then come down to its minimum and then back to its center line. Ooh. This is my sine wave with an amplitude of 3, and it's not perfect, but now I'm going to label my key points. The first one is 0, 3. The second one is 3 pi over 4, 6. Third one is 3 pi over 2, 3. Fourth one is 9 pi over 4, 0. And the last one is 3 pi, 3. Okay. Now what my point was about staying within your boundaries, I mean, we need to be relatively between, evenly between here and the bottom, the max and the min. I just put that in just to show you I tried to stay within those lines. Next, we have a cosine graph to graph. So let's identify the K is 1, the A is 2, the center line, oh, wait a minute, I just wrote that in the wrong place. The A is 2, and the B value is pi. So your center line would be shifted from 0 to 1. Y equals 1 is your center line. Do not label anything on your graph yet. Your amplitude is the absolute value of 2, which is 2. And your period would be 2 pi divided by pi, which is 2. Right? This is, our center line is at 1. So if this is 0, our center line is 1 above that. And that is like an imaginary little line. So I'm dashing it in. The graph is shifting up that much. Above that, we have the A value or amplitude of 2. So from 1, we have to go up 2 more. So we'll be at 3 at our maximum spot. Your graph is actually staying between here, and then I'll go down. Now, I just made a solid line. You really just, it's not really supposed to be a solid line. I just did it because it was really easy to get a nice straight one. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'll do it in highlighter. So I should be staying, I don't like how that, whatever. Between there, and then what would the min number be? Not -3. We are 2, the amplitude is 2. It's 2 above the center line to 3, and 2 below the center line would be at -1. Okay, Below the center line would be -1. Oh, that crazy line I just made. It didn't straighten it. Oh, darn it. Usually I'll make a straight one for you, but all right, good enough. All right, so I'm supposed to be staying in between there, and I just don't even like the way my lines look, but it's good enough. All right, x-axis is where we label things. Our period is 2. So I'm just going to come out here and put 2. I'm going to cut that in half. That would be 1. And then half of 1, 1/2. And then our x scale we just found out is 1/2. So 1/2, 2 halves, and then halfway between 1 and 2 would be 3 halves. There, center line is at 1. We're going to start graphing the cosine graph now. Okay, I've got everything I need. I've got the period. I've got the amplitude marked off. All right, so now I start graphing. Cosine normally starts at 1, 0, 1. This one's going to start at 0, 3. Okay, then it comes back to its center line. Then it comes down to its minimum, back to its center line, and then back to its max. Put curves. Try to hit your points. And that's about all what I would expect of a graph. Okay, we got, I'm really not supposed to come above there, but there we go. All right, now I need to label the points. The first one was 0, 3. The second one is 1/2, 1. The third one is 1, -1. The fourth one is 3 halves, 1. And the last one is 2, 3. Okay, to the next slide. One more example of centerline change. K here is a -2. The A value is 2, and the B value is pi over 2. Remember, this is K, this is A, this is B. The center line will be at -2. Y equals -2. The amplitude is the absolute value of 2, which is 2. And the period is going to be 2 pi divided by pi over 2, which we changed to 2 pi times the reciprocal of pi over 2, which would be 2 over pi. The pi's cancel, giving us a period of 4. All right. If this is 0, which is where your x-axis is normally for y value of 0, it says the k value is -2, which means this graph shifted down 2. And then the amplitude is 2, so we're going to have to go 2 down from there. If you need to extend your arrow a little bit because of your spacing, go ahead. I'm just going to put mine down. Mine's about spaced so that it's at the tip of the arrow. I don't mind if you extended your arrow a little bit. That's fine. All right, now, where was the center line? It was at -2. What do you mean? Oh, sure. Yeah, if you want to do this dotted line, that just helps you. That's why I'm drawing it, to show you how easy it makes it easier to graph it. Now, if the amplitude was 2 and our center line's at -2, we are maxing out at 0, 0. So I'm just dashing on here because I want you to realize we're not going to go past the x-axis. And we're not going to go past -4. So our graph is like it's going to be in between here. Now, most of the graphs in your homework assignment, they have lines on them. You can do just what I'm doing when you're graphing. I just don't have lines on this paper, so I'm showing you where they are. All right, so our whole graph should stay in this range. All right, our period's 4, so I'm just going to make a mark out here at 4. I'll cut that in half, which would be 2. Half of 2 is 1. So this is labeled 1, 2, 3, 4 on the x-axis. On the y-axis, it's got 0, negative, you can write just -2, and -4. Those need to be there. Okay, going to start graphing. This is a sine wave. Okay, so sine would start at its center line. So it's going to start right here at 0, -2. Then it would come up, and then it come back to its center line, then go to the min, back to the center line. Okay, try to hit your points. So our first point's at 0, -2. Our second one's at 1, 0. Our third one's at 2, -2. Our fourth one's at 3, -4. And the last one's at 4, -2. All right. Does anybody still need this? No? All right, moving on. Now, guess what? One more thing. Now we're putting a C in there. Right, we know K represents a vertical shift of the entire graph. C now is a shift to the left or the right. And it's called a phase shift in trig. If C is positive, the whole graph shifts left. If it's negative, it shifts right, because the format is x minus C. And the C is in parentheses. The B is outside the parentheses. It's important to think about the period, because if the graph shifts left or right, the place it finishes in one period will also shift. Okay, now first we're going to just practice deciding what's going on with the graph, and then we're going to start graphing some phase shift. So if you were just looking at this equation, what I want you to notice, it says decide what the period is, which means you're going to look at the B value, which in these cases would be all of the numbers in front of the parentheses. And the phase shift, we're going to look at the C value, which would be the part by the X in the parentheses. All right, so that's all we're looking at right now. We're going to ignore the rest. We're just going to pay, but when we graph it, we'll have to pay attention to all of the numbers. So for A, the period's going to be 2 pi divided by 1/2, the B value, which changes to 2 pi times the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2. So the period would be 4 pi. The phase shift is pi units to the which way? Okay, so you can say right pi, or you could say pi units right, or pi to the right. But you got to give right or left. For the second one, the B value is 2. 2 pi divided by 2 would give me a period of pi. The phase shift is, it says plus, so it's going to go left, and that amount, pi over 2. The next one has a B value of pi, so 2 pi divided by pi would give me a period of 2. The phase shift is minus, because subtract 5, so since the format is minus C, that would be right 5 units. And the next one, the B value is pi over 3. Take 2 pi divided by pi over 3. Multiply by the reciprocal of pi over 3, which would be 3 over pi. The pi's cancel out, and 2 times 3 gives me a period of 6. The shift would be left 1. Or 1 to the left. All right, now let's do it. So we're going to graph at least one period of the following. Y equals -2 cosine x minus pi over 2. Okay. K. Is there any K value? No. So K is 0. That means our center line will be the x-axis. So it's going to be at 0. The A value is -2. And the B value is 1. And I don't know why we don't have a C blank, so I'm going to write it. The C value is pi over 2. The amplitude is never negative. It's the absolute value of -2, which would be 2. Okay, the period's going to be 2 pi divided by 1, which is still 2 pi. Okay, the phase shift is going to be left or right. Okay, right pi over 2. All right, so I've labeled my center line. I think about my amplitude, but then I realize, wait a minute, that negative sign does something. It reflects the graph over the x-axis. All right, so here we go. I got an amplitude of 2, my center line 0, but I have to go down 2 from there and up 2 from there. All right, so I'm going to stay within these marks. If you want to dash that out, that's up to you. The x-axis is my center line. Okay, then I'm going to say, well, this is a -2, though, so that means it reflected. So it's not going to start up here. It's going to start down here. Now, I'm not phase shifting it yet. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to act like the period. Now, wait a minute. We got to go to the right sum. So that means we need to leave some space to shift it right. Does that make sense? So we don't want to put the end of the period way out here. We want to put it in a little bit. So I'm going to put my 2 pi about here. I'm going to cut that in half, pi. Cut that in half, pi over 2. My x scale is pi over 2. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, halfway, 3 pi over 2. Now, if you think you're really comfortable with this already, you can go ahead and do the shift all at once, but I'm going to show it graphed before it's shifted, so I'm going to do a little dash graph. So if I were not shifting it, I would be starting at 0, -2. I'd come back to the center line. I'd go up to pi 2, and then I'd come back to the center line, and I'd go back down. So I'm going to dash this because it's not my answer. But this would be the graph reflected and not phase shifted. Okay, so I've got, yep, no, you're not supposed to go till 2:30. Your track city, oh yes, ma'am, you go at 2:20. Soccer's 2:30. Yeah. Okay, guys, so we got to shift this now. And the shift was right pi over 2. So this is a really nice shift because we're already labeled in terms of pi over 2. So since it's already labeled in terms of pi over 2, our actual graph would be this point right here, just went right pi over 2. This point went right pi over 2 to here. This point went right pi over 2 to here. I'm going to do a different color just so you can see. Different color. Okay, that one went there. This one went over 1 pi over 2. This one goes over 1 pi over 2. And this one, it's going to go over pi over 2 units to here. Okay, now I got to get that labeled. I can go ahead and draw my curve. But it's not going to be hard to label because we know our x scale. It was 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2. So that's where the graph ends. Okay, so this point is at pi over 2, -2. This point is at pi 0, This point is at 3 pi over 2, 2. And the fourth one is at 2 pi, 0. And the last one's at 5 pi over 2, negative 2. Oh, and that painful? Okay. Does anybody still need this before I go to the next one? Okay, I'll wait a second. All right, we're at the top now of 27A. Yes. No, you do not have to draw this. Right, I'm just trying to have people see the shift. And some students will want to do it this way. And some of you will be able, be fine with just doing the slide right away. And no, you don't have to show that dash graph. Okay, next one, we got a K of 1. We have an A of, there's nothing in front of the sign, so that'd be 1. The B value is also 1. And the vertical shift, that would be up 1. I don't know why that was there all of a sudden. The C value is pi over 4. Okay, so our phase shift is right, pi over 4. Our amplitude is simply 1. And the period, since B is 1, would be 2 pi. All right, so I've got a center line change on this one. This is my x-axis where 0 is. I will label, actually, since we're only going up to 2, I'm going to make it a little higher just so I can stretch this up a little bit. I'm going to put 1 and then 2 on here. Okay, since the amplitude is 1 and the center line is 1, then the max would be 2, 1 above 1. This is my center line. If you'd like to put the dash lines, you may do so, but you don't have to. And then this max line, if you want to dash it up there, that's up to you. I'm just going to estimate them. I realize I'm shifting right, so I'm not going to go all the way to the end here with my period of 2 pi. I'll go here, which is actually don't need to be that far towards 0, but that's all right. Half of 2 pi would be pi. Half of pi would be pi over 2. So notice your scale, or your x scale, is pi over 2. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2 between here, 3 pi over 2. That's all I'm going to label for right now. I will have a minimum value of 0 because the amplitude is 1. 1 above the center line, 1 below. So it's going to be staying between the x-axis and 2. This is a sine graph. So we started our center line. I'm going to graph it without the phase shift first. Starts the center line, goes up, back to the center line, then down to the min, and back to the center line. Okay, this one, I'm going to have a little bit harder phase shift. Really not that big a deal, but we're shifting right to pi over 4, and these are not marked off in pi over 4. So where is pi over 4? Half a pi over 2. Okay, so it'd be right here. Well, that's convenient that it's half a pi over 2, because now we can just split them all up. I'm sliding this point over to here. Okay, then if I go from the one that's up here, I have to go halfway between pi over 2 and pi. So that's going to slide to right there. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4 would be its label. This next one is going to slide to the right, halfway between pi and 3 pi over 2. Okay. And that's 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, pi over 4, 5 pi over 4. This one's going to slide to right between these two. And that's going to be 6 pi over 7 pi over 4. And the last one is going to slide over pi over 4 and land at 9 pi over 4. So here's our actual graph. The points are, did I label my points on the last one? I did. Okay. Pi over 4, 1. 3 pi over 4, 2. 5 pi over 4, 1. 7 pi over 4, 0. And the last one, 9 pi over 4, 1. Okay. Graph at least one period of the following. Now we're doing a cosine graph. Okay, nothing added on out here, nothing out in the front, so K is 0. Center line is 0, so I can put that right on my graph. I've got an A value of 1, so my amplitude's 1. Got a period of 2 pi with a, well, we got a B value of 2. My pen's stuck, excuse me. Wait a second here. I have a B value of 2. And a vertical shift, which would be left, pi over 2. Now, look here. You see how that's going to be a problem? Sorry, I really meant to change those notes. Let's do this. Since we're going to be going left pi over 2, I'm going to kind of ignore that. And I'm going to put a vertical line in the center. What did I do? Oh, I wrote that in the phase shift line. Thank you so much for saying something there. This should have been left pi over 2 for phase shift. I'm sorry, vertical shift is what? None. That should have been none. None. We didn't go left on a vertical. No, left is not vertical. Not at all. It's horizontal. Yes, I did screw that up. I don't know. My brain was just going ahead and wasn't even thinking. All right, get rid of that. Oh no, I have had to correct some students on which is which. Yeah, so I surely don't want to be saying it wrong. Hello. All right, amplitude was 1. I get, what was our center line? Was 0. Okay, and then amplitude was 1, so I'm just going to go ahead and put up. My pen stopped moving, so hold on one second. All right, I'm going to go up here 1 and then down to -1. Try to space that evenly if I can. All right, so I said the period, we didn't say what that was yet. I got a B value of 2, so it's going to be 2 pi divided by 2, which is just pi. Okay, so I'm going to go out here to pi. Well, let's start cutting that in half. So half a pi, pi over 2. Half a pi over 2, pi over 4. My x scale is pi over 4. 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. Okay, now if I were graphing this without a phase shift, I'll do that now. It would be starting up high at 0, 1, coming through at pi over 4, down to -1, back to the center line, and then up to the max. Okay, now, it's not that graph, though. It's been shifted left pi over 2. How many marks is that? It's 2 marks, okay, to get to pi over 2. So I'm just going to back up and label back this way. -pi over 4. Well, let's just -pi. Oh, I'm doing that messed up. I'm just going to go back -pi and split it up evenly. Okay. Right now, start shifting it. I don't know that I don't have to go all the way to here, but I just wanted to space it the same kind as I did on this side. All right, so we're going to go 2 marks to the left, but it actually only needs to come back to pi, negative pi over 2. All right, so each point, just slide them 2 to the left. And sketch the curve. All right, so this would be negative pi over 2, 1 is our first point. Our second key point, negative pi over 4, 0. Our third is 0, negative 1. Fourth, pi over 4, 0. And the last one, pi over 2, 1. Pardon? Oh, forgot. Okay, next one. Graph at least one period of the following. All right, amplitude. Now notice that the 3 is plus 3 way at the end. That's the K, just so you know. All right. That's a vertical shift of up 3. I'm going to make sure I put the vertical shift on the right little line. All right, the amplitude is just 1. The B value is pi. So the period is 2 pi divided by pi, which is 2. And the phase shift is right 1. Okay, so I got a period of 2, and I'm going to be shifting right 1. So I'm not going to go too far out, but say I make that be 2. Then this would be 1, 1/2. I don't know why I'm making such ginormous tick marks. 3/2. My tick mark's more reasonable. Oh, I forgot something. I'm going to use this for the center line because I think otherwise you guys are going to have trouble making this look nice. I'm not going to normally do that with regular graphs, okay, because you see our vertical shifts up 3. I kind of messed up. Yeah, I messed up. Because I really don't want those labels on there. Yes. The vertical line? Absolutely. You mean like that? You guys got room to go down, don't you? Okay, so if we're going to use this as our center line and make that 3 because otherwise it's going to be so hard to fit on the picture. Is that good? Okay. Where's the x-axis? Because I just want to show it. Well, let's first think about our amplitude. Our amplitude was only 1, so we're only going up to 4. And if we come down that much, that would be at, my pen froze again, 2. And then this would be 1. And then so the center, the actual x-axis would be way down here. So I'm going to put that in. So I can label it. All right, period was 2, and we got to shift to the right one. So I'm going to put my 2 here. I'm going to cut that in half, 1 and then 1/2. And this would be 3/2. Now I'm way up here on my center line though, and then I'm going to only be going down this far. So the graph's actually staying in between here and here. Okay? All right, so let's say we're doing a sine wave. So it would have started right there, and then it would have come up to here, and then I'm going to dash this in. And then I'll shift it, and we're going to the right one. So the actual graph, this one's shifting to here. This one's shifting all the way to 2. I'm going to go, whoopsie. Did I do that right? 1, no, it should be right there. I'm trying to rush now because we're running out of time. This one is shifting to here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. I've got the first part of the hump. And then where we're going to end is where? At 3. And these were 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, 4/2, 5/2. I shift them all right one. Okay, what's the matter? This is the original graph, right? And I shifted all the points right 1 unit. Okay, you label them, of course, and then we're out of time. All right. Have a great day.